Well, hello again and welcome to part 2 of our rather marvellous sew-along. This sew-along is of course featuring the Sunday Morning Sweatpants. That's what the pattern front looks like, don't forget. And just to refresh your memory, in part 1 we did all the kind of prep work. We looked at the pattern, had a quick look at, the amount of pieces that we had, and we discussed things like what fabric to use, what needles to use, all that good stuff. And so now for part 2 we're going to be cutting out our garment and preparing two things, just two of the smaller pieces. And so I wanted to go through a few little things with you before we start cutting out, all very relevant, I promise you. The first thing to say is that we have of course our instructions. There's our instructions, it says here cut out and keep them, that's what I'm doing. And on our instructions you'll always find a pattern layout for your fabric. Now here is the thing about a fabric layout that we do in our patterns. I have to assume that not everyone is as mean as I am with fabric, because I'm really mean with it. I will get the biggest amount of pattern pieces into the smallest piece of fabric I can. It's just what I do, I always do it. But I always allow a little extra on our layout. So you'll see here I'm going to lay it out slightly differently to how it is on the pattern instructions. But do please bear in mind, if you follow the pattern instructions, it'll be fine. I'm just really mean with my fabric. I want to get a lot of things out of a small amount of fabric. So that's the first thing to tell you. The second thing to tell you is that of course we are using our rather beautiful French terry. Ooh, it's lovely. This is the one that's got the slight looped back. And if you're a relatively new sewer, then you may not have worked out yet that most fabric is sold with the right side, the side that's going to be kind of the public side, folded to the inside. It's normally folded in half like this, right side's on the inside, and that's how you'll receive it when you buy your fabric. But of course we have to pre-wash our fabrics, pre-wash them and pre-dry them, which means that then they're all over the place. So I've refolded this back the same way. The right side, the public side, is on the inside. So anything I have to mark on here, anything like that, will be on the inside, nobody will see it. So please bear that in mind. And when we lay this out to cut it, I folded it in half from selvage to selvage. The selvage is the kind of finished edge of the fabric. So selvage to selvage, and there's my fold here. Now because this is a sweatpant and it's, there's not that many pieces, there's really only one piece to cut on the fold, and that is your waistband here. So that bumps up where it says fold, rather cunningly. You put it up to the fold there and you pin it on. So it's easy enough to just kind of lay it out and kind of jigsaw things together. However, before, you have to excuse me scratching my nose, I think allergy season has started early this year. Before we start cutting out, I want to quickly chit-chat with you about sizing, choosing your sizes. We discussed this in the last part, and I said what you want to do is really go by your biggest size. Either your hip size, your waist size, go by your biggest size. And I still stand by that. However, once you've made your muslin, yes, you're going to make a muslin for these, or let's call it a test garment. You're going to make a test garment pretty much as is. You're not going to change anything, you're just going to cut the nearest size that you want to use and you're just going to put it together. Because you're then going to try it on and check, do I like the length? Do I want the legs narrower or slimmer? Do I like where the waist sits on me? All that stuff, and you can tweak it and fiddle it. So for this iteration, I'm actually cutting these a little looser in the lower leg. Because that's how I like my pants. I like them a little looser, and I've also gone up a size. I've actually gone up 2 sizes because I really do like a loose, relaxed pant. And you can do this very easily with this style, partly because it's a knit, partly because it's a kind of casual sweatpant, and partly because the style kind of lends itself very well to doing that. You can also go down a couple of sizes. In fact, when we did our test piece for these, when we were doing our prototypes, I made a pair for a girlfriend of mine who's very slender, and I made her, she's normally our size 8, but she prefers a much neater fit, so I made a size 6, and I actually took slightly bigger seam allowances too, so it really pulled it in, and she loved them. They're almost like a legging, they're really, really tight when you do that. So go up a couple of sizes, go down a couple of sizes, it's really up to you, but it's yet another reason why you have to make a muslin. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to lay this out, and we're going to cut it out. Alright, I am roughly ready to cut out my garment. I've just laid the pieces out, haven't pinned them yet, got the trusty pin box for that, but I'm not sure if you can notice that this piece, the front leg piece, I've flipped over, and that's just so I can kind of interlock the pieces. You'll see on our layout, well, when you get the pattern you'll look at this, you'll see I've done the front leg and the back leg the right way up, so they're not kind of flipped around. But in real life, if I don't have a fabric that shades or has, you know, a direction to it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to interlock my pieces so I can get a lot more garment pieces out of a smaller amount of fabric. So I've got my waistband up against the fold here. I've got my back leg here, and all I've got to do is make sure that the hem of my back leg is straight, is kind of perpendicular to my selvage. And then I've got my front leg here, and as I say, that's the right way of it. I've flipped it over. Because of course we're cutting a pair of these, so it's not really such a big deal if I do that. Oh, excuse me again. Okay, back yoke and patch pocket there. Now if you're at all in any kind of dilemma as to how to find your grain line, you follow your stretch direction. Your stretch direction is marked on each pattern piece, and it's really key that you follow it because you'll get the whole garment moving in the right way. You do not want to have a stretch direction this way on one piece and then that way on the other. Things could get horribly wrong. So the other thing you may well have noticed is that I've got all my pieces on here apart from this. This is my lower leg insert, and I haven't managed to fit it onto my piece of fabric. That's okay, because I've got, what you can't see is I've got another kind of 6 or 7 yards down there of this. So I'm just going to cut that sort of towards the edge on there, and then of course I'll go ahead and cut something else out of it later. But this is one of those things we can't really show on a pattern. I can't assume that you're going to cut something else out, but of course you will be. So lay this all out, it all fits together really easily, and I'll do this little piece separately. Now when you lay your pattern out, before you pin it, it might be a good idea for you to notice where the notches are. The notches are the little triangle pieces that are marked. There's not that many, but they are really important. They're really on the inside leg. The inside leg here, there's a single notch on the front and on the back leg, you'll find it, and it corresponds to the top of this leg insert. And on the back leg only, there is a little pair of double notches, if I reach down there, that matches the double notch on the leg insert pattern. Those are really key for you to nip into your fabric, so make sure you do those. So once you've laid it out like this, you're going to pin. And of course I'm on a table here that's got a cloth on it, so I must make sure I don't pin through like many layers, because I could be cutting this out too, not what we want at all. So pin it through, and just making sure that obviously your folded piece is on the fold of the fabric. And you'll notice this fabric is really nice because it doesn't actually need ironing. Once you've washed it and dried it, it doesn't need ironing at all. Comes out of the dryer nice and smooth. We love it. Okay, so we'll just do that. Now once you've got all your pieces pinned, obviously you cut them out. Oh, I suspect I pinned that one through. There we go, now I haven't. Okay, you pin them all like this, basically just around the edges. I always find if I'm pinning big pieces like this, go for every single corner and then between if I need to. I mean, that's just, you know, a rough rule of thumb for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces out now. Once they are cut, we've got 2 things to prepare. We've got our patch pockets and we've got our waistband. Waistband's easy peasy, it's one tiny little seam to prepare it, and the pockets, they're slightly different, but they're not too tricky, and it's very useful for you to know how to do a patch pocket. So here we are back, having cut out our pieces, and I've kind of roughly laid them out as they're going to be put together, I mean very roughly. So we've got waistband, back yoke has to be attached to the back pant. There's the front leg. The patch pockets have to go on top of the front leg before you attach it to anything else. And there, here is our leg insert, our bottom leg insert. So you can see not too many pieces at all. So now we've cut them, we're going to do our prep work. We're going to do our preparing our waistband and preparing our pockets. Now the reason I say to you to do stuff like this, and it's kind of on our order of work, is because it's always easier to do the smaller things first. I mean, truthfully, you could get away with doing this, with preparing your waistband, right towards the end when you're going to join your waistband, but it just makes the flow go so much easier. You know, it becomes a pleasure as opposed to stop, start, stop, start, which can get really irritating. So I'm now going to go away and I'm going to prepare this, and all I have to do is I have to join these two short ends here, right side of fabric to right side of fabric, along this short seam here. I have to do that, and then I'm going to press the seam allowance. And normally when you press a seam allowance, you'll press it so it goes open like this. Well, you can't do that with this because we're going to use either an overlocker or serger, which is going to seal all the edges together, or we're going to use a long, narrow zigzag, which again, you can't really press it open. You have to press the seams one way or the other. Doesn't really matter which way you choose. So I'm going to do that, and we'll have a loop, and we'll see what we can do with the loop, because it's nice just to prep it and have it ready to go. So now I've gone and done the quickest and the easiest part of these entire pants, which is just joining the short ends of the waistband strip to make a loop. And I have pressed the seam allowances one way because that's what you have to do. Okay, so once you've got your loop, here's what you're going to do. You're going to fold it in half lengthways, so you've still got a long loop, and you're going to fold it wrong sides together. And so you will get your doubled loop, which is going to become your waistband. And really after that, for now, you don't have to do a darn thing to this. You can just put it to one side, safe in the knowledge that your waistband is ready for when you are. So that's what you're going to end up with, waistband loop. So I'm going to put that to one side and start with you on the pockets. Now, these are the only pockets on these pants. You don't have any on the back, you just have patch pockets on the front. So it's worth doing, well, it's always worth doing a nice job, but as it's kind of a feature, you really need to make it beautiful. So what we do is we start by interfacing the top edge of the pocket. Now on the pattern it says it's optional. It is, it's optional, but you should do it anyway. I like to use, when I'm using knit fabrics, I like to use obviously a knit interfacing, and the one I use is the tricot or knit interfacing from Fashion Sewing Supply. I will put the link in the box below this video. I know I recommend their interfacings all the time, and you probably think I have shares in the company. I do not. I have no affiliation whatsoever. I'm just a very, very happy customer, and once I started using them, especially the tricot, which is lovely, I'm not using anything else. So if you want a really good finish, this is the one to use. It has to be said, if your fabric is very floppy, you may choose to interface the entire pocket. It's one of those things you've got to play with and see what you want to do. But you can see, even though I've bent over the top, there's the whole piece of it. The strip of interfacing goes over what's going to be the finished edge, and that's to give it a nice crisp finish. You don't want it finishing right at the fold line, you want it to go over a little bit. So once you've done that, once you've interfaced your pockets, I like to run a row of overlocking around all the edges just to kind of keep them clean and keep it all together. And then you are going to do this. You are going to fold the top edge back on itself and do a little tiny seam. I am going to bring the camera in a moment and show it really, really up close. Little tiny, tiny seam. And that is what's going to give you a nice crisp corner to your pocket. Now that's the little seam I mean. See what I mean? It's the smallest seam you're probably ever going to sew. So it's the top of the pocket flipped over, and just that little line there. You're going to sew it on the curved side as opposed to the straight side. The straight goes into the seam. But here's what you're going to do. You've sewn that down, scissors, and you're going to snip off, can you see that? The corner, like that. When you've done that, you can turn it out, and it's going to behave itself really nicely, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Now this is what I mean. This is the back of the pocket, the wrong side. You can see I've pressed the top of it down, and when I turn this corner out, I have no choice but to have a nice sharp corner here. So you go ahead and do that, and you press under 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre all the way around the pocket edge here. You leave this edge alone. This is the edge that's going to be sealed into your side seam, even though it's a front side seam, but that's going to be sealed into the seam. So leave that one alone. So you want to press this down and press all the way around here. So now I've flipped the pocket over. This is the right side of the pocket. That's the opening of the pocket. And you can see I've pressed all these edges under and left that one alone. Now to complete the pocket, you're going to top stitch along here to hold the pocket, kind of pocket hem in place. And then it's ready to be applied. So you're going to do that, and you have a number of choices here. You can do a row of self-coloured stitching, in which case you're not really going to see it. You can do a double row. You can do contrast. If you're going to do contrast, do make sure that you use a heavier thread so you can actually see it, because with knits it can kind of sink in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then my pockets are ready to go onto my pants. So this is what the pocket looks like when it's pinned on. You can see the curved edge here. That's the one we're actually going to top stitch down, all the way from the finished top edge all around this curve right up to the side seam. We're going to baste that together on here, but we're not actually going to kind of top stitch or worry about it too much. So along the edge here, I'm going to say maybe 1/8 of an inch in, so kind of edge stitch it all the way around. Don't forget, do it the same colour as this, I would recommend, as you're stitching along the top of the pocket, or contrast, whatever you like. But when it's done, that's what it looks like. Ooh, nice. Really nice, simple, flat pocket, ready for it all to be sealed together. So once you've got your pockets on, you're really ready for part 3. So that's it, we're at the end of part 2 now. We've prepared all our pieces, we've cut all our pieces, we have our waistband ready to be joined onto our pant, we have our pockets ready to be applied onto our pant, or in my case, one of them's applied, one of them isn't, and all the pieces are ready to be put together. So in part 3, that is exactly what we're going to be doing, putting the whole pant together. We're not going to be completing it in part 3, that's really for part 4, but we're going to be doing the bulk of it at the next time. So the next time is kind of the big time, but one thing you will discover when you're making these pants is they're really, really easy. They're very simple and they're very easy to do. But of course, like anything, it helps the first time you do them to have somebody walk you through all the steps. So that's what this is. It's just a walk through. And so we'll see how it all goes together next time. You will be amazed at how easy it is. So that's it. End of part 2. I'll see you in part 3.